Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Hopefully we'll be uploading the footage from my Mindspeak presentation over the weekend, and I'll tweet that when Rufus has edited it. Macro thoughts. I wrote over the weekend that markets may be caught off guard if the Fed hikes rate this week. I was saying the Fed meets this week. The market has a September rate hike of 25 basis points priced at less than 20%, and just one rate hike before year-end priced marginally below 50%. It's been a groundhog day with the Fed, who have barked endlessly but have done little else. A September rate strike would catch the markets off guard. And I was saying, with so many curveballs out there, Paul Virilio's wealth is the hidden side of speed, and speed the hidden side of wealth. I was saying that was something to ponder. Barclays and BNP, two primary dealers for the Fed, predicting a rate hike this week. I'm inclined to take that position, actually. How much more can central banks do for lagging economies, asks Forward Guidance. I'm not so sure they can do very much more. And that's why the piece that I wrote on the 12th of September was quoting Hotel California, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. Relax, said the Nightman, we are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. And essentially I was saying my second trade of the year, my first was to be long the yen from January, which has done well, is to buy put options on 10-year bonds, JGBs, treasuries, because this is going to pop, and when it pops, the wizardry won't work anymore, and at that moment there is going to be one heck of a move. I like this photograph from Africa Geographic, retweeting Laney BK just passing through Amboseli National Park. It is a wonderful place. The backdrop is Mount Kilimanjaro, the snow-capped peaks, and it has the most extraordinary collection of elephants. But this photograph is about zebras, but it gives you a feel of what it looks like. Breaking news, this got my attention. Backpacker drops the sun, tweeted Avtar Ram Singh, and that took me all the way back to Royal Hunt of the Sun, which was a play that I studied at school, a 1964 play by Peter Shaffer that dramatizes the relation of two worlds entering in a conflict by portraying two characters, Atahualpa Inca and Francisco Pizarro. Atahualpa was the Inca prince, Francisco Pizarro was the Spanish chancellor, as it were. Have you ever climbed a mountain in full armor? That's what we did, him going first the whole way up a tiny path into the clouds with drops sheer on both sides into nothing. For hours we crept forward like blind men, the sweat freezing on our faces, lugging skittery, leaking horses, and pricked all the time for the ambush that would tip us into death. Each turn of the path it grew colder. The friendly trees of the forest dropped away, and there were only pines. Then they went too, and there, just scrubby little bushes standing up in ice. All round us the rocks began to whine the cold, and always above us or below us those filthy condor birds, hanging out on the air with great tasselled wings. 4 days like that, groaning, not speaking, the breath a blade in our lungs. 4 days slowly, like flies on a wall, limping flies, dying flies, up an endless wall of rock. Tiny army lost in the creases of the moon. On that note, I also like this photograph of the sunrise at the Palace of Versailles. And this Chateau de Versailles discovers the exhibition of Olafur Eliasson, who says about Versailles, of course, that was the Sun King, The Versailles that I've been dreaming up is a place that empowers everyone. It invites visitors to take control of the authorship of their experience instead of simply consuming and being dazzled by the grandeur. It asks them to exercise their senses, to embrace the unexpected, to drift through the gardens and to feel the landscape take shape through their movement. And then this caught my attention. It was bought for $100,000 and now is being sold for 20. I thought it was worth more than 20. Untitled, by Hugh Scott Douglas, talking about how the art market is reversing at the fringes. Political reflection: City has reduced the probability of a Clinton victory to 60% from 65%, with a 40% probability of a Trump win. That's via Holger. Over the weekend I wrote about this, and I said the first thing to observe is that this is a two-horse race. The second thing to observe is that event risk surely favors Trump. Over the weekend, a deafening explosion rocked New York, injuring 29 people, forcing the evacuation of at least 2 buildings. And I said that the narrative behind this explosion did not cross the threshold. I think the politicians were keen that it wouldn't as well. And I said, just imagine a situation a few days before the vote where the narrative does cross the threshold in a tightly fought race. Such an event is going to move the dial big time in Trump's favor, probably move the dial significantly further than Nigel Farage's poster showing a queue of migrants and refugees moved the dial in favor of Brexit. In the same piece, I was saying it's all about turnout, something Gabon's President Ali Bongo Ondimba worked out a while back. Bongo's stronghold of Haute-Ogooué province clocked a 99.93% turnout versus a countrywide average of less than 50%, with 95% voting in favor of Bongo. And then I said, if Trump can turn on and turn out his base and Hillary can't, then this is a toss-up. And then I asked, where will we be in the event of a President Trump? And I said, who really knows or can predict that? 34.4% seems to be a trading buy. Going by City, it's now at 40, so it was. I like this photograph from the Daily Beast. Donald Trump's pitch: feel terrified and vote for me. Hillary Clinton responded in a positive way. This election isn't a reality TV show. It shouldn't be about birth certificates or name calling or stunts to get on cable news. Then she says, you want something to vote for, not just against. Optimism, not resentment. Answers, not anger. Ideas, not insults. Bridges, not walls. Put up a photograph of POTUS and Hillary, and then give you a picture of the view from UN headquarters in New York City on Wednesday, complete with a rainbow. And the EU Commission also tweeted the inside of the UN General Assembly, so it's a big set-piece event. Of course, I remember Putin taking the stage last year and asking when he began, what have you done? I remember Mugabe, many others. It's always a place for drama because everyone gets an opportunity to say something. After long honeymoon, Canada's Trudeau faces tough choices. Has been a honeymoon, and as I said at Mindspeak, I think he is the most extraordinary exponent of 21st century viral, whatever you want to call it. It's so effective. International report: Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Let's hope they close it down eventually. Syria ceasefire collapses in wake of weekend US airstrikes, predictably, I suppose. ISIS beheading 5 civilians in eastern Syria on charges of spying. This is a good point, I think. What is different about suicide bombing in the wars currently being fought in the Middle East and beyond is that the bombers are skillfully deployed in great numbers. The impact of many individuals wearing explosive vests or driving vehicles packed with explosives on the battlefield can counterbalance the other side's control of the air and superiority in heavy weapons. Merkel took a big reverse at the polls, and the question is her political future clear? I don't think so, and it's a great shame because I think she did have a very strong moral compass in so many matters. Finally, from the news piece, so then we dug a beautiful new canal. It's huge, really huge. Donald, are you listening? Apparently, LCC met with Donald Trump this morning. I like this tweet. It says only 10 companies own all the world's brands. It sure looks like that when you look at this. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 111.75, dollar index 95.86, Japanese yen, where's that? 101.73, the pound 130.42, the Australian 0.7543, India rupee 67.025, South Korean won 11.2037, Brazilian real 327.25, the Egyptian pound 887.91, and the rand below 14 strengthened. I think that was driven by the current account deficit narrowing. Dollar index, I'll put up a one-year chart. I think it's a trading buy at this level of 95.86, and the stop would be at 93. I'll put up a one-year chart of sterling. This is the place to load up with a 127.50 stop. I think everyone's gotten bearish again. Carney started it, but really they're going to have a big jump in inflation coming their way. And I think once we start seeing that, all rate cuts will be off the table. Campaign Digital, Sir Martin Sorrell will join Twitter, but he has one condition. I like this from Bloomberg, the 11 best burgers in New York City. Obviously not for the vegetarians amongst us, but look pretty tasty. Gold, 13.16 last, 13.04 is the key level. I'll put up a 6-month chart. Crude oil, let me put up WTI first, 43.62, and then I'll also put up Brent via Aurelia in Copenhagen, and she kindly updated a tweet I tweeted out of her chart, and she says support found, ? Brent. The world's best currency rally has lost its mojo. This is the Brazilian real, which soared 23% in the first half of the year on bets that President Dilma Rousseff would be ousted and a new administration would get the country back on track. Challenges include an economy that's forecast to contract 3.4% this year after shrinking 3.8% last year. Inflation has been above the midpoint of the central bank's target for 6 years. Unemployment is 11.6%. Stanley's saying this is a good place to buy the currency. The currency has declined 4.2% since August 10. That has trimmed its gain this year to 21.5%. I'm not so sure. I think Tamer has had a free pass, and at some point it's all going to go back onto the street. Bovespa climbs on commodities with correlation at a 3-month high. We've had a bit of a recovery in some of these commodities, and that's led the Bovespa higher. Look at the chart Bloomberg put out. This is interesting. Debt mismatch leaves emerging markets exposed to shock, says the BIS. Thing that borrowed a lot of dollars. Sub-Saharan Africa, I like this photograph from Constance Mufushi, Maldives, Earth Pics. DR Congo, well, lots of drama over there yesterday, kept ratcheting higher through the day. Police fired tear gas at opposition protesters. The opposition is now claiming 50 people were killed. HRW, as Daniel Bukele earlier this month, in what was a precedent comment, said the decisions President Kabila and his government will make in the coming weeks can make all the difference for Congo's future. There were reports, this was from Ryan Cummings, that President Kabila deployed his presidential guard in Kinshasa after protesters relieved police of their weaponry. He says the DRC is getting hairy. I conclude by saying tsunami risks are spiking. 6th of June, I was writing about how the numbers were building. Moise Katumbi must have been thinking that this might just turn into a tsunami. Of course, President Kabila administered a technical knockout by removing him from the country. Nevertheless, on the 6th of June, I said the street is a tinderbox and it has become a major area of political contestation across the continent. And then I was quoting Virilio again from May 2015. The revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form, not in the place of production, but in the street. in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, a machine of attack, becomes, in other words, a producer of speed. I said, as we look around the world today, we can see a battle for the street, from the streets of Bujumbura to the streets of Baltimore. In November last year, I wrote about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa and concluded that we need to ask ourselves, how many can an incumbent shoot stone cold dead in such a situation? 100, 1,000, 10,000? And I said, this is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. One could argue that President Kabila is now in the throes of such an event. And I was saying about Ouagadougou that the preeminent point to note is that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. Young protesters in the DRC today on Patrice Lumumba's memorial calling for President Kabila to go. Protesters apparently burnt the body of a policeman during these riots. So we got a very fluid situation in the DRC. Hervé sent me a photograph obviously from his office or from his apartment. He's in Kinshasa, and you can see fires all over the city. Oil crash spooks investors out of Africa, but there's a silver lining. This is Market Watch. Have a look. South Africa's top gold miner says President Zuma has to go, with poor governance deterring prospective investors, according to the head of Sibanye Gold Limited, the biggest producer of South African bullion. Any solid investor, any solid company is founded on good governance. And what we have in South Africa at the moment is very poor governance from a government point of view. South African oil shares up 2.53% this year. Dollar versus rand below 14. Have a look at the 6-month chart. The rand's been firming of late. Egyptian EGX30 up 13.82% this year. Nigeria oil share down 2.8% this year. Ghana's central bank kept the benchmark interest rate at 26% and unchanged. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 10.65% this year. Who owns this triangle of sea resources? Kenya and Somalia are about to find out. It's a narrow triangle off the coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean, about 100,000 square kilometers, and is the bone of contention between neighboring Kenya and Somalia. The position of the boundary is a grey area, said Timothy Walter, a maritime border conflict researcher at the Institute for Security Studies in South Africa. For Kenya, however, the boundary is quite clear. It lies line parallel to the line of latitude. That gives Kenya the larger share of the maritime area, and it has already sold mining licenses to international companies, but Somalia disagrees. I like this quote: after watching every TED talk on tech in Africa, overused stories are M-Pesa, Maasais with phones, farmers checking crop prices. South Africa is offering refuge to South Sudan's Riek Machar, according to CCTV Africa. And then have a look at this chart, FDI stock in Africa by source country. That's from the EIU. The Central Bank of Kenya Governor Patrick Njoroge is this morning expected to chair the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting since the introduction of interest rate caps. The Kenya shilling is at 101.299. The Nairobi all share firmed 0.5%, but is still down 9.24% this year. The NSE 20 firmed 0.4%. That's down 20.34% year to date, but it's about just over 100 points higher than its multi-year low from the 30th of August. As I said, central bank to meet. But just to remind you of these comments from Furusawa, who's Deputy Managing Director of the IMF, linking deposit and lending rates to the central bank's policy rate may compromise the independence of the central bank and hamper its ability to enact monetary policy towards achieving its main objectives, that is, to maintain price and financial stability and to support the economy. He also warned that the politicization of monetary policy bears risks for a sound financial system and for credit access, especially to risky borrowers. These would include inefficiencies in the credit market and undermining the effectiveness of monetary policy transmission. That was Citibank. City analysts said that the Kenyan situation called for a change in banking models because the extent of the rate cap was more draconian than in other countries where such restrictions have been put in place. Tier 2 at 0.5 and Tier 3 are zombie banks because they can't raise capital at the lower bound of the corridor. They're raising money at a higher wholesale price and effectively, therefore, need to lend at a higher rate. They're being capped. They can't do that. They're in trouble. The bourse started this week on a positive note. Safaricom was up 0.53% to close at 19. My year-end target is 22.50, which is up 18.42% from here. So I think quite a nice rally we're getting there. Uchumi up 7.575% to close at 355. Biggest gainer, buyers outpaced sellers by a ratio of 91. Standard Bank was the heaviest traded share yesterday. Eased 2.53% to close at 77. Traded heavy volume versus moving average 1.232 million shares. It's bucked the downdraft, actually, that has engulfed banking stocks in 2016. It is, in fact, up 2.024% on a total return basis in 2016. They reported a 21.976 acceleration in first half earnings per share. But, of course, that was before the interest rate bill was signed into law. KCB up 0.95%. Equity, which really carved out an aggressive posture last week, taking the battle to the likes of Mshwari, closed unchanged at 25.50. Stanley Fahari IREIT rallied a further 5.33%. That's rallied 34.54% this month, but remains minus 32.72% this year. EABL up 3.54%. And that's now at a 6-week high. ARM, which is surely a big beneficiary of the interest rate cap, firmed 1.96%. Thank you for stopping by. I will be going to London on Thursday for a couple of weeks, so I won't be on the podcast, but I'll do my best to keep on top of things from wherever I am. And I do appreciate the fact that you come by, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.